Welcome to Your Town. I'm Chef Wendy Brodie, Art of Food. My guest today is Carissa Chappellet, and I love being the culinary host of this show because ag people, other chefs, winemakers, all the things that I'm passionate about, I get to meet exciting, wonderful people, and you are always at the top of the list of all the time. I mean, everyone is, but I've known you for a number of years now, and your wonderful family. Not to mention the wonderfulness comes out in the product that is one of the, the adjectives is iconic wineries, and it certainly is, but you've added your own touch. So welcome, Carissa.
Well,
wonderful to have you. And tell us about your family and the winery, if you don't mind, first.
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you for having me here. And like you said, we've known each other a long time, and it's fun to get to share this with you as well. A lot of people know that our Chappellet Winery is up in Napa Valley, but we have a big contingent of family down here in the Monterey area in Big Sur. So I'm one of the ones who lives in Big Sur. But I run the company with two of my brothers. There's actually 6 siblings. And my parents started the winery. Actually, this is our 51 years now in the wine business. So for Napa Valley, we're one of the elder wineries, and we're known for our Cabernet Sauvignon, as you're familiar with from many dinners together. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but they're all of them. We recently joined the wine club just so we could keep getting
get my dragons,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
That's great.
So you and your sister Leisha are wonderful artists in addition to your legal skills. That was just a mind blower for me. All these years, and I never knew you were a lawyer or a legal expert.
Yeah, I try not to let that out too much. Yeah, that's my fallback career. I'm an attorney. I'm actually the legal director for the family. And
that's so important, though. We need people like you, and to have that in the family is just perfection.
Yeah, and then trying to balance and get my art in there was finally, about 10 years ago, I convinced the board, which is my family, that my dragons should be at least on 1 bottle of wine. So about 10 years ago, they let me have the Malbec to work with.
Oh, how
So
lovely.
I have an art label, and then my sister Leisha, she's an artist as well in Big Sur, and so she has her artwork on our Pinot Noirs.
Well, they are so special, and they different art piece comes out every year for both of you.
Right,
and
right. So I designed a different dragon each year, and she comes up. Oftentimes hers have to do with landscapes of Big Sur, and there might be a cow or a horse in one of her scenes, and
Yes, well, we will have her on to talk about her art, but you have such a full background that I want to concentrate on your talents today. But isn't Prichard Hill, isn't that a designation now for?
So Prichard Hill is our trademark. We bought the Prichard property, and the Prichard family had owned it in the late 1870s. And back at that time, there were actually vineyards that they had planted there. So our vineyards are on the footprint of an old vineyard that had been there in the 1870s. So my dad had the foresight to trademark the name Prichard Hill back in the late 60s, early 70s, and it's become world renowned for great Cabernets, and all of our neighbors are also producing world-class Cabernets.
Terrific.
And that's then becomes one of my legal jobs, to manage our trademark and make sure that it's all, that everybody's recognizing the limits of the usage and promoting it the way that it should be. So. Yeah.
And I'm not sure who your winemaker is after all this time.
His name is Philip Carello Titus.
Okay.
And he's actually been our head winemaker since 1990.
Wow.
And he actually, before that, he worked for about 5 years under Kathy Corison, who was our winemaker. So Philip is with us currently still, and that longevity, I think, really just helps with the consistency of our quality. along with the fact that Dave Pirio is our vineyard manager. And I noticed when you were giving my name, we put Chappellet Winery and Vineyard, and they are just equal parts for us. So obviously, for me, our vineyard manager is equal in need and importance as our winemaker. And Dave's
wonderful.
He's been with us for longer than Philip. So he's been with us, I believe, about 35 years.
Oh my goodness.
And knows every vine on the property. And then alongside him is our vineyard foreman, who's been with us since 1971. So I say this because I think it shows up in the wines. And we have real consistency and a dedication to making world-class Cabernet.
Now, how about tasting? Does that become a family, like he would share the new prospects, or is it all left up to him and the magic of nature?
Well, growing up, it was a family adventure to learn about the wines.
Yes.
These days, we leave it to our winemaker and his team. If we want to get involved with it, so sometimes one of my siblings wants to get involved, they can become part of the tasting panel. But he's got a good team. We really don't want to mess with his.
That's very respectful. I'm impressed.
We just keep encouraging him, and he does a great job. So, yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, let's take a look at some of your other talents, your artwork. And why don't you describe some of these labels? And
well, I brought you 2 samples. So each year, as I mentioned, I do a new dragon on our Malbec. And this one is, you'll notice it's etched and hand-painted onto the bottle.
Gorgeous.
So I don't do that part, but I have a wonderful artist friend, Candace Norcross, down in Napomo, and she does the glass etching. And she actually takes my original paintings, and then she hand-paints back in the colors. So each one of these is an individual piece. And then our regular size bottles have the printed label. And this is Princess Arras. She's the keeper of the small winged things. So she protects the insects. And there's stories about each of these dragons, which is why I brought you my book.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got to get it just right here.
In my book, I talk about the dragons of Prichard Hill because, of course, all these dragons have some connection with our property. And I actually had to write this book in order to convince the family to use my dragons on the wines. My dad asked, when I first was suggesting it, he said, but dragons don't have anything to do with wine. And I said, but Dad, don't you remember 4 million years ago when this mountain was 14,000 feet tall, and then the dragons came and dug their tunnel in, and he said, and then what? I said, well, if you let me write the story, I'll write it and you can use my dragons on the label. So he was lured in, and he got totally behind the project.
That's so clever.
Now so I entitled this one Book 1 because I was in a rush to get it out before the wine came out.
Yes.
And so Book 2 is yet to come. I'm working on it, and hopefully within the next year, I'll get Book 2 out.
But what inspired you with dragons? How did that come about?
I'm not really sure where the first one did. I was always a doodler in, my journals and things, and drawing little creatures. And at some point, they just became dragons. And I'm not quite sure what its origin was, but it tends. So being an attorney, I have this type A, very, I make checklists and all. Mm-hmm. When I'm drawing dragons, that all gets quiet, and I'm not
in
thinking.
The zone.
I'm not thinking. I'm just drawing. They appear, and then they take on a life, and they become part of a story. So.
Now, you don't think maybe you could have been dressing up your box turtles as
I didn't bring you that one, but I did one that's called a tortidre, a tortoise dragon.
Oh.
And it's a dragon that lives inside a tortoise shell. So yes, my giant land tortoises have come into my fantasy dragon world.
Oh, and now I remember meeting those long ago, and what are their names again?
So Tortolot. Tortolot is now about 65 pounds, and Tortoni is about 100 pounds. And I think when you met them, they must have been...
They were boxed.
Yeah, I could bring them to meet you, but now I can't move them.
Oh my goodness! What is their food consumption?
They're actually grazers. So they're like a cow, so they would graze, pasture land. But I can't let them just roam because they would try to go to the highway or something, so I have them penned in.
Yes.
So I have to do pasture management for my giant land tortoises, and I grow certain grasses and lettuces and things.
In their environment.
Yeah.
Because I thought I remembered you having lettuce out there for them.
Sometimes they can go through 5 to 10 heads of lettuce a day, of romaine lettuce, so I can't grow fast enough for them.
Oh,
but
my
I have an active vegetable garden that largely goes to feeding my giant land tortoises, that when I got them at Hacienda Hay and Feed, they were the size of the palm of my hand.
Oh, my goodness.
And they have personalities. They're wonderful. And, of course, they do come into my storytelling.
Oh, that's fab. I'm so glad.
Glad you
you
asked.
must have been sending me that message. So besides
so I brought
yes.
Princess Aras. I brought Grandma Millie Merple. She always
Yes.
wears a vest. And then, because I felt, that I couldn't just show off my own art, I brought one of my sister's bottles, and she, as I mentioned, Leisha is a wonderful artist, and so her art
and sculptor.
And so sculptor, she does oftentimes sculpts goats, because
I want one of those.
She
so
has
badly.
goats, and as you maybe have had some of her goat cheese.
I did. I helped milk one of her goats.
So
one time.
you imagine her hands are on those goats, so that's sort of creating the models when created the cast for her bronze goats.
Oh, goodness. So how does one acquire? I mean, is there a website that people can
Well, you can go to the
books?
Chappellet website, chappellet.com, or if you're up at the winery. And that's really my only outlet at the moment. I would like to build up. I have 2 fans in your green room, Diane and Diane, who are trying to now be my publicists for this book, because
wonderful.
I just self-publish, and I really just sell
Yeah.
it from the winery. But they want me to take it, big time. So maybe it'll soon be available on Amazon or some larger venue.
Oh, I'm so excited. See what community does. Isn't that wonderful? And
I brought you this little gift.
Yeah, I just am so thrilled with
It's a tea towel that actually should be pretty good for some tea towels don't dry.
Yeah.
So this can actually dry your
this
dishes.
is an art piece for me. It will hang. I have special tea towels that are decoration.
That are for display?
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Well,
they aren't meant
They can
to
also
get
be
some.
used and washed and
But
reused.
a few wine spots
That'll be
there may be
fine.
creative, match
Yeah.
some of
So
the
this
colors.
is actually next year's dragon. So you're seeing the
Oh,
preview of what will be
fabulous.
on the next
and does
bottling.
it have a name?
Yes, and it would be good if I would remember my children's names. You caught me on that one.
That's okay. That's
They'll
okay.
probably come to me as soon as we wrap
and
up.
you have a new 4-legged child, relatively new.
I'm so glad you brought up my other child besides my
Yes.
tortoises. So
Yes.
Tuck has been in my life almost going on 4 years now, and Tuck is my Wisla, and we are inseparable. I almost brought him to your show because we
that
never
would-
leave each other's side. He now has 4 degrees. He has his international therapy dog license.
Oh, fabulous.
So he can visit hospitals and schools, and we do visits. And he's licensed as a service dog, and he's got his Canine Good Citizenship Award. And he's my best friend, and he also surfs. So I don't have the videos with me, but he loves to get up on the surfboard, and he can ride the waves with me, so we get in and body surf.
And are you both on the same board, or does he have his own?
He doesn't mind if I let him go and push him and help him catch the wave. He has great balance, and then he swims back out and gets back on. Yeah, so he is my joy. Yeah.
So besides the body surfing, you are a cyclist too, and I remember at some of the wine festivals you've led separate rides.
Right.
What's been one of your longest or biggest rides?
Well, that was a shill question, I think, because my longest ride was 15,000 miles around the world.
Oh my goodness!
44 countries.
Oh my
so
goodness!
I took a year to do that. That was the year 2000.
Congratulations!
Yeah, that was a great year.
So I suppose you stopped along the way wine tasting other
little bit of tasting
wine and food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And I've got to go back to the beginning, even though it's not. What inspired you to go into the legal profession?
You know, I met the dean of the local law school at the time, of the Monterey College of Law, and just was chatting and said, I always thought about going to law school, but I don't know, I'm sort of not enjoying college. And he said, well, why don't you test in? And so I did, and it just was a fit for me. So I liked the way the legal mind worked, and that was my mind likes to do that. And so I went here to Monterey College of Law.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, and it was a night school, so I could work in the day and go to school at night. And yeah, so now I do that for the family. My main part of the job is to make sure we can keep the company in the family. So that takes just constant planning.
I would imagine with its notoriety that it would be.
And then anything legal comes across my desk, and I figure out, you know, how it should get handled, and then I do my dragons and live in Big Sur and ride my bike and have my dog, and it's a pretty great life.
And the friends you've introduced us to along the way.
My dog has a new role now too, because I'm involved with the Big Sur Health Center, and my dog is part of his training is that it's a therapy dog where children read to dogs, and it's a new program, and so they found that children sometimes will not be inhibited to read to a dog. So the dog sits there and listens, and it's so delightful to watch. You know, little kids that are just learning to read, and they will tell the dog the story where they might be embarrassed to tell the teacher or their, you know, or an adult. And so it's a dog reading program.
That.
So I've talked with the health center about starting this program there in Big Sur. So we'll see if it can catch on.
And are you able to video a little bit of that?
I haven't yet, but that's a good idea. Yeah.
And you're also part of a woman's palette. Can you explain more about that?
This is a group that started up in Napa Valley that actually started with a group of women winemakers. And we found that we had lots of common interests, so we put together this group that actually has an online magazine. And so it's just a women's supportive group in the wine and food industry, but mostly it's vintners that are in the group. Yeah.
So it hasn't trickled down here yet.
No, we don't have a chapter down here.
But darn.
Yeah, maybe we could start one.
Yes. Well, Carissa, anything else that I'm missing about you and your wonderful family? I mean, you're all artists. Your mother was one of my key inspirations, Molly Chappellet. And just quickly, when I first went to my big event in San Francisco as a guest, she turned out to be the designer of the tables, and each big round table had a case but beautifully created in the center of just that vegetable, like a corn table or a cauliflower, and it was so magnificent. I've never forgotten.
Was that one of the ones at the Stanford Court?
Yes, yes.
Because Jim Dodge just visited Mom just about 2 weeks ago.
Oh my goodness!
From then, so yeah, great remembrance.
Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you, Wendy.